Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Becky McNatton. Along with host Tara Martini, we're glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
Hello, my dear.
Hello.
So today, I'm very excited about this. We are exploring a unique topic, and one that I am so excited to get into because part of this word I've heard so much from youth and on social media and all these things. But I wanted to get into like the actual name and topic. But first, I want your thoughts on the following statement. Okay. So there's this thing, a default mode network. It's a complex whole brain network that's activated when we reflect on ourselves. So this area is activated when we reflect on ourselves, the past, when we think about our future. It surprisingly is also activated, that same thing, when we focus our attention on a visual piece that we find aesthetically pleasing.
Interesting. Activates the parts of the brain, same parts of the brain. Okay.
So this interaction contributes to the profound feeling that art or visual pieces arouses.
Okay.
So for people who sit here and go, wait, that is why when I look at a piece of art, or I look at a piece of nature, or I look at a certain architectural detail.
Sure.
This is your why. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, it makes sense to me. And also, I've never had it told to me before that those are connected. Oh. So I'm learning something as we're talking here.
Well, there you go.
But it totally makes sense to me.
Absolutely. Yep. It is, like you said, it is something that I'm very aware of, and I think you are too, because you are a very big feeler and you do have a strong response to certain things like nature.
Yeah.
So I understand the concept.
Yeah.
For sure. But I never understood, well, why is that?
Yeah.
So today's topic is neuroaesthetics. And boy, do we hear aesthetics.
Yes.
From the young adult group, that's so aesthetic. It's aesthetic. And I always say, no, it's aesthetically pleasing, right? So according to the Penn Center for Neuroaesthetics, which is literally a thing, it is defined as a subdiscipline of cognitive neuroscience concerned with the neural basis of aesthetic experiences, which involve interactions with entities or events that evoke intense feelings, often of pleasure. So that's why we most commonly hear it's aesthetically pleasing.
Got it.
Okay. Because we see something visually, we have this connection, now we know why, right? And it's pleasing to us. Because now we know it has a connection to that part of our brain where at the same time we're reflecting ourselves on the past and the future. So it's a very personal thing to us. It's the same area that's activated. So the aim of neuroaesthetics is to understand our systems that underlie aesthetic experiences and choices.
Got it.
So their aim is, okay, well, how is it then that Becky then makes certain choices about her space she creates, which is so cool to me because we're going to look into the many reasons on what is it and all about indoor environments.
Yeah, everything neuroaesthetics. And if you've never heard the term before,
all things.
We're learning about it today. Such an interesting topic. We're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through the connection between neuroaesthetics and wellness.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We will be back in just a moment.
All you got to do now.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Becky McNatten, along with Tara Martini, and I want to get right back into our discussion on neuroaesthetics, which makes me feel smart even saying the word.
It really does. That's my goal today, to make us feel smart.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned what neuroaesthetics is. It's the idea of understanding the aesthetic experience and the choices we make because of it,
Mm-hmm.
in that there is something in our brain that also we're making different choices. So it looks at investigating the nature and neural basis of what makes something beautiful to me versus what makes something beautiful to you. Then how do we take in and experience art, design, architecture? And it's a fascinating thing because a lot of the data comes from research using computers and tools like brain imaging, so EEG, MRI. So this isn't just something where they're surveying people saying, which building do you find attractive? Which type of lighting?
Mm.
I mean, this is all scientific and looking at brain activity, which then looking at, okay, then they take all of this and it's how can we measure these experiences scientifically? And then how can we leverage the impact of the arts to improve your health and well-being?
Yeah, which makes so much sense that they're related.
Yes.
And I have believed that
Yes.
that how we live. I feel like I heard this a really long time ago. How we live is how we feel.
Yes.
And what we live amidst is often contributing to our mood and outlook and perspective, and that we could use neuroaesthetics to improve our health and well-being, which would
Absolutely.
be a beautiful way to. It's a tool. It's a
Mhm.
tool.
A huge tool. And it's, if you look back, if right now we take time to reflect, it's how many times, especially as therapists, but how many times just as human beings, we've talked about how environment plays such a key role.
Yeah.
And it can even be physical environment, right? Lighting, color, all of those things impacts mood, all of the things for a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's looking at, okay, what is the true impact of that? So, Becky, I have questions for you. What type of indoor, or as I just shared with Becky off air, a phrase that's new, the built environment?
Yeah.
The built environment built by man. So, what types of built environments do you find pleasing? What features do you find pleasing in a built environment?
Well, gosh, I honestly probably am thinking about this in this second. So this is
Yes,
not
that's,
necessarily
I'm putting you on the spot,
you
girl.
are putting me on the spot.
So think of you're inside a
Uh,
building.
yeah, I would say probably things that have more curvature to them.
Okay.
The building that our office is actually located in is a curved building.
Yeah.
And part of what I loved about it before I even walked in, I commented to the person who I was doing the walkthrough with, oh gosh, that's a curved building. I already love it. And I didn't know that was neuroaesthetics.
Yes.
So I think I'd say like rather than like kind of sharp lines
Mhm.
or I like things that seem flowy
Mhm.
and open.
Okay. What about colors for you?
Well, the first word that I think of is calming, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like all blue
Mm.
or gray.
Okay.
I actually enjoy going into colorful spaces that don't feel like a circus,
Mhm.
where there's something bright. Some of my favorite pictures, as many people in my world know, are sunflowers
Mhm.
and kind of natural scape. But so I do like bright colors,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
that is also calming. It feels peaceful to
Yep.
me.
Yep. Um, okay, now let's look at the opposite. What you don't need to name a specific place because we're not going to call out anybody here. Now I want to know what type of indoor environment does the opposite for you,
Mm.
where you're like, ugh, this place is cold, it's uninviting. What features are not pleasing to you?
Well, definitely sterility. And
Yes.
so small, I feel very closed in
Okay.
there. When it's all white,
Okay.
or all one color, very kind
Okay.
of the uniformness, or like drab.
Mm,
I've been in some environments that I I- the word that keeps coming to mind is sterile, but it feels very unwelcoming.
okay.
And
Like
that is
cold?
like sometimes really dark colors.
Okay.
Sometimes that's, as I said, sharp lines,
Hmm.
and very closed off spaces, very
Okay.
segmented spaces.
Okay. It's interesting because I want to call out Becky in like the best way possible. Is one of the things that more clients have commented on is that Becky has created the most magical space in her practice. That,
Wow.
oh my gosh, that when people walk in, I always say to first time clients or new clients when they're asking like directions to the place or whatever, I will say, and I don't sugarcoat things. I always say, like, please don't judge our office by the colors and the building you see on the outside.
Mm,
Please just wait until you get into the suite
mm.
because everything's like drab khakis and creams. And then you open the door to Becky's practice, and it is just this colorful unicorns and ponies and glitter.
There might actually be unicorns. I do love a unicorn.
I mean, it is. You have created this magical space that is colorful and welcoming. And I have had clients say, particularly when I worked for intake, they say, this doesn't look like any therapy office I've ever been in
Mm,
because they're used to it looking like everything you just said,
hmm
the cold, sterile, monotone, look where it just feels blah.
hmm
Um, And that is not what you want, right? For people in a therapy office.
Well, and to think that when you're talking about neuroaesthetics, that actually not only could it feel welcoming, that could improve people's mood. Worse, the
Yes.
science of neuroaesthetics says that that does have an impact on us neurologically. That if a space flows with how we receive kind of pleasure or
Mhm.
positive experience, positive feelings,
Yep.
we can help that just by the space.
For sure. And how powerful that is.
Yeah.
And that's the key to neuroaesthetics is if every business, company, creators, architects had that in mind as they are creating, the impact on mental wellness would be so significant before those people went into business with someone or went into a therapeutic session or
hmm
did business with someone or had an important business meeting or conversation.
hmm
Think of the impact that would have.
Huge.
Um, and so let's look at okay, I've brought up the phrase built environment, and let's now look at the connection to wellness. Um, Oddly enough, which this does surprise me, but also is like disheartening for those of us who love the outdoors. Most people in the developed world spend more than 90% of their time in built environments, which is
I
like,
believe that.
ugh. Let's look at how those environments affect our sense of well being. In that, you are so right. What you just said is while that can promote us flourishing,
hmm
but it can also do the opposite,
hmm
right? If we're in this sterile environment that's just very cold. So, another term that may be new is biophilic design. Now, this is something I can speak for Becky. I know you're going to love because you are like me and we love nature.
Yes.
Nature calms us,
hmm
nature grounds us. It's where we feel at peace.
Truly.
And I can speak for a lot of listeners, they feel the same way.
hmm
There's so many people out there that feel that way. So, given humans' preference for nature and its benefits, because we're not the only ones, I guess.
hmm
Biophilic design aims to bring a natural aesthetic into the built environment. So it's going off of just human nature of we are drawn to the outdoors. So we are going to bring the outdoors in to the built environment.
Where we spend 90% of our time. Makes total
Correct.
sense.
Yes. One thing, and there's quite a few of us that do this at work. We bring in plants, water features, small trees, pictures of the outdoors
Yes.
to spaces. We kind of have that everywhere throughout the office. They don't have to be real plants, but they certainly can be. Um, I have a wall of plants cascading down. Um, Also, the windows themselves just look out into nature. Um, but you don't have to have windows, right? There are a lot of offices, schools, different environments that don't have any windows.
Yep.
So, how can you bring the natural element into that? Well, one of the things you can do is obviously the plants, but you can add natural materials such as wood, and that's going to influence your mood,
Wow.
which is crazy to think about, right? Where, so what if you don't have a window? There were many classrooms at my old school that did not have windows, which is mind blowing to me. Well, create a wall of, wood planks, bring some plants in, even if they're artificial, but it creates that and it does change the mood. What I found fascinating is that if there's variations of the wood material, it produces psychological changes. Like, so also, I mean, just paying attention to detail, which I think architects have to know all this and like think about the details and the time and the energy they put into all of this. If they come from a neuroaesthetic perspective, would be fascinating.
Well, and I'm thinking right now about how many spaces I go into that don't have this, as we talked about, that
Yeah.
that aren't including of these elements.
Right. And something that I found so fascinating is this is a newer concept. Like, this is not something that's been around for a long time. And so, when I was speaking to, I told you before we were on air, I loosely interviewed people of like, tell me about the space you work in, things like that to kind of gather.
Love that.
It was astonishing to me because I feel like you were very intentional on your design. Um, I'm very intentional about my office space. I was thinking of my space through a therapeutic lens as far as like creating it for the clients. Um, it's astonishing how many people, it was more just they designed it due to just their personal preference or just for like staff's preference, but maybe not like the students or, things like that, where the push for neuroaesthetics is really what's the objective? It's for clients, students, shoppers, the consumer part of it.
Right.
Which I think is fascinating. And so you named a lot of what is actually fact. Open spaces,
Had no idea.
curved spaces.
Wow.
I mean, you're just nailing it.
I knew neuroaesthetics before I'm literally
Really
learning
did.
today, everyone,
Yeah.
what neuroaesthetics even is.
Yep. And so it is modern, open, curved spaces alleviate stress. Architects design buildings that enhance that baseline tone, which they say the parasympathetic nervous system, it reduces stress. They will incorporate the natural patterns,
Sure.
which is huge, like the curves, which they say enhance mood, cognition, and preferences. Um, it balances engagement and relaxation, evokes a sense of naturalness, making them more, um, makes people more calm, although it's a built environment, right? It's saying we understand people prefer nature, but we can try and create that same feeling
Yeah.
in a built environment.
Yeah, and that we have huge control on bringing those aspects in.
Yep.
And as you said, this doesn't have to mean total architectural design here. If you are in
Right.
your living room at your house, you have ability to say, how do I bring some of those natural elements in?
Yep.
In my kitchen or bathroom, like
Mhm.
the things that might be small ways to integrate this
Yep.
stuff.
There's an example because I'm going to give some examples. Historically, um, there is falling water. We've all heard of Frank Lloyd Wright. In the United States, falling water is his masterpiece built over a waterfall. And so it's blurring indoor outdoor lines.
Mm.
If anyone has been to Arizona, when you are in the Phoenix Scottsdale area, there is this condo building. And I know they just built a second one. And the architects designed it, which is to me absolutely stunning and of course so aesthetically pleasing. And literally I'm just connecting the dots now going, it's neuroaesthetics.
Yeah.
The entire building is glass, like it's just windows. But then what they did is on every single balcony, instead of it being a railing, the entire balcony is covered in plants.
Oh, wow.
But it's not by the residents, it's not by just like, oh, pots and whatever. You can't even see, it's just greenery,
Mm.
moss, and then it's hanging down until the next condo below it.
Wow.
I don't know how in the world it is maintained because I think that every single time I drive past it. But it is absolutely breathtaking and so aesthetically pleasing. That to me is such a key
Yes.
example of neuroaesthetics. It stands out from the cold feeling you get from all the other buildings around it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can see why it would be such a draw to live in a place like
In a place
that.
like that.
I can see why there's another one being built
Mhm.
right next to it.
Mhm.
And it also makes just the landscape itself more appealing when you're in the desert.
Totally see that.
Yeah. So let's look at the aesthetic appearance on how we can look at um, more than just, okay, we've looked at bringing the outdoors in, but now let's look at one thing we've talked about before, the art of being cozy.
Yes, we did a whole show on this.
Yes. So let's look at the aesthetic experience from things being cohesive and creating that sense of hominess, you know? Um, so one recent approach to understanding how preferences for environments work, both natural and built, may affect mood and cognition is by assessing people's aesthetic experiences. Aesthetic responses to environments can be distilled into three key psychological dimensions.
Okay.
Okay. So, one is the ease of organizing and comprehending a scene.
Mm. How we can take it in.
Yep.
Mhm.
Number two is informational richness and generated interest. And number three is personal ease, belonging, and comfort,
Mm.
which I think that's probably the one that people think of the most,
Yeah.
right? Is how the comfortable space, that sense of belonging. Um, but I also love the ease of organizing and comprehending a
Yes.
scene for sure is an element, an aesthetic element. And then another element of the aesthetic experience is that richness and that interest, what they call fascination, which is that can be different. My fascination, that aesthetic facet, could be different than yours.
Sure. Well,
Right?
and I think about spaces that are so busy, it gets at that first one.
Yep.
I use the word busy, but there's so much to look at
Hmm.
that is that ease of organizing. There isn't an ease of organizing.
Right.
And and so we aren't necessarily saying bland,
Right.
but we're saying that someone can take it in and make sense of what's going on.
Yep.
I
But
totally get that.
but different for people, right? Because I
Different.
know some people who can walk into, let's just take an office or a library, for example, that can walk into and see so much color and so many knickknacks and treasures and love that style and
Mhm.
see organization in the chaos.
Mhm.
where another person could walk in and their psychological response would be stress and chaos.
Good point.
But that's the whole facet of fascination, right? And or organization. Um, that it the coherence part is very different from one to the next.
Mhm.
That is why what I think is so cool is that it's so individualized.
Mhm.
Where I think too, if you look at, and I don't know why this makes me want to laugh, one thing that I don't include in the research is I wonder when they look at partners, if
Mm.
your idea of the aesthetic experience when looking at coherence, fascination, and hominess is vastly different than your partner. How does one create a cohesive space
Yeah.
when all of these are very
And
different?
they would be very different.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah, something to think about. And then one of the last things is creativity, which we know that, right? We've heard of that is so
Yes.
creativity is whatever, for education and the economy. Um, Creative thinking becomes increasingly valued across industries where now they think about environmental design because it's taking the biophilic, piece of bringing nature into it. But then also they're saying, I don't know why it took this long to figure out. Wait, if we design and take our cold office buildings,
Mhm.
you know, I won't name names. Take big things in the Twin Cities that create stuff,
Yeah.
are known for
Yeah.
creating things. Wait, if we take those spaces and we make them more creative using architectural design,
Mhm.
maybe their creative juices will flow a little bit more, promote creativity. Apparently, this is a newer concept. For some of us, we're
It is
like,
amazing. I mean, it's really cool to think that because neuroaesthetics is a science that's shown that it,
right,
it promotes well-being. And and so we can use that. Our space allows us
yes,
greater path to do our thing,
it does.
whatever the thing is.
And how cool that that is a thing now.
That a chair isn't just a chair,
Right,
or the wall hanging isn't just the wall hanging.
right.
That those with intention behind them have an ability to impact us to do what we need to do or want to do
Yes,
more creatively, more
it is.
effectively. That's
And
cool.
it is something I think because I think in our lifetime we have been privy to this change, right? I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember hearing of this first with like the Google offices, not in Minnesota, but where I was like, and everybody was like, "Whoa, what? They have standing desks or they just have like rooms where people like collectively like create stuff?"
Yeah.
There was no more offices where you just sat in a desk, and people were just baffled and bewildered by this. It was almost like they were fascinated but confused by it.
Mhm.
Now, 20 years later, it's starting to become a little, I don't know, not norm, but a little more common, right? Where now spaces in the Twin Cities,
Yeah.
businesses are taking on, that look.
Mhm.
More common spaces, more spaces to create because as it's saying here, creative thinking becomes more valued across industries. And so they're looking at it going, wait, if we enhance creativity, we're going to optimize the learning environment, the workplace,
Mhm.
we'll make more money. I mean, it's a win win situation.
Mhm.
And it's really transforming how the work environment looks
Yeah.
and also allowing people to be more creative.
That's amazing.
I love it. So, got some questions for you, my dear.
Mm.
Yes, I thought this would be fun to look at. Okay. So, when you think of emotions, the feels, because of course, we think of our feelings wheel, we think of the show, Feels Out
Mhm.
Loud, our name. What emotions do you most associate with aesthetics?
Gosh, well, the first word that comes to mind is calm.
Mm, okay.
But then the second emotion that came
Yeah.
to mind is wonder and curiosity. And
Oh,
and maybe
okay.
that's because wonder is my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
But when I think about aesthetics, I think about like a settledness,
Okay.
but also
Mm,
an energizing.
okay.
So it's both of those things at the exact same time.
Okay.
Pleasing is a great word to describe all of that because
Yep.
it does feel good.
Right.
Like that, I don't love using the word good,
Hmm.
but in this, it feels like
Okay.
it
Yep.
encompasses what I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah. I think of peaceful only because just like the calm might, when a thing is aesthetically pleasing, my mind is at peace,
Yeah.
right? Because I look and everything's in order the way I find it
Hmm.
aesthetically pleasing, or the colors, things, there's peace,
Yep.
right? Um, but then I also, if we look at it, I also think an aesthetic feeling word is joy,
Yeah. That's part of
right?
the energy part.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, it was interesting because when looking at this and creating parts of this, I was like, I never thought about it before about like what emotions are connected to
Mm.
aesthetics. Um, where I tend to look at the positive, but then there could be that other side to it, right? Because you could look at the negative
Yeah, well,
of,
I think about spaces I've been in, and I'm pondering this. I'm going to be pondering this the rest of the day now.
yeah,
Spots that makes me feel anxious,
yeah,
where I'm in there and I'm going to
mm,
be looking now for what
good,
about
yep,
this space do I feel anxious or when you say kind of peaceful, sometimes the reason I said calm is because I feel clarity. Like I
mm,
can think about the things I want to
mhm,
think about. There are spaces I'm in where it feels cluttered. I cannot focus. I cannot
like
focus.
loud,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm going to be paying attention to the spots I'm in. Listeners, do that with me
yes,
on
yeah,
how do you feel in this space and do you notice what about it
I
is
love that.
contributing to that?
Well, and here's the other thing too, is pay attention to those spaces that you're in that you find aesthetically pleasing or calming. And then what about those things could you bring into your home,
Absolutely.
right? You love whatever it is. Okay, recreate that in your home
Hmm.
to create that peaceful
Yep.
mode. Or, wow, that, like Becky just said, makes you anxious when you're at the doctor's office or whatever. Oh, wait, I have that same thing at home.
Right.
Okay, get rid of that. Or that color, get rid of that color at home, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, I just think that, yeah. Um, I love this question. How does beauty influence decision making?
Mm. Well, uh, I think that depends on how beauty is absorbed
Hmm.
by the person who's experiencing it. I get this mental image, and listeners, if you hear the word beauty,
Yeah.
what image comes to mind? For me, it's some sort of nature based
Hmm.
image in my mind, and so I feel like beauty influences decision making from a groundedness or
Mm,
moving
yeah.
us to a space of intentionality without us really even knowing.
Okay. Yep.
But I also think awe often can
Mm,
occur from beauty, and and that inspires a decision making on uh, and awe develops an energy.
oh, I love that.
She's speechless, everyone.
That was like the most like genuine. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that was real good.
Hmm.
Yes. That awe. Yes. And it is if we use that to drive our decision making, I think we would make less yeses
Mm.
because we would be more intentional. if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. Well, you and I are sort of stewards of the word intention.
Yeah.
And I just think beauty brings us to the connection to something bigger than us,
Mhm.
or something that just feels so. It can be moving.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, when we're part of something that's beautiful,
Mhm.
and one driving us to want more of that.
Mhm.
Was just having a discussion with someone recently about, then how can you see that in your daily life? We don't necessarily need the extraordinary, that
Right.
amazing
Yep.
beauty, but could our takeaway from that be that our decision making is driven by with intention seeking to notice
Mhm.
where it is already,
Right.
and so totally see how beauty impacts decision making.
Yes. All right. Of course, I have to ask this because we are therapists. How might aesthetic experiences be used therapeutically?
Well, I think we started with this even in our office space,
And we've
that
talked about,
that
oh,
we in our line of work we talk about trauma informed
yes.
regularly, and aesthetic experiences really have the ability, I'm learning this today, to be aligned with what trauma informed is,
Mhm.
aware of how people show up in this world
Yes.
and what might be there's the story that we don't know because we
Mhm.
can't see it. And so used therapeutically, well, if what we're hearing and seeing is science says this promotes well-being,
Mhm.
well, I what I'm hearing today is this is a tool for living.
It is.
In
Yep.
addition to things that you and I talk about in terms of expression, let your space allow you to express the
Mhm.
space itself,
Yes.
not only an action that you're taking in the space, like that's another thing and other shows that we've done,
Yep.
but it can be used therapeutically by promoting opportunity for us to have a sense of pleasure or
Right.
joy or calm,
Yep.
all the emotions that we've talked about.
Well, and I think the added piece of how can it be used therapeutically, um, I give an example because it happened to me with another therapist where I was arranging my space. I loved the vibe it was giving. I thought aesthetically it was very calming and welcoming. And, but at the same time, are we going to think of every feature that needs to be, of
Right.
course not.
Right.
And a therapist came in and said, "Oh my gosh, this looks great. But here's something to note. Hey, a lot of clients won't want to have their back to the door
Hmm.
because they may not feel safe. So for control, they may want to be able to see the door."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing."
Yeah.
Right? Because part of the aesthetic experience is the feeling the client is going to have.
Right.
Right. And so I adjusted the love seat to a different spot so that the client's entire experience could be aesthetically pleasing, cozy, they would feel safe,
Yes.
all of those things, because I do think the aesthetic experience is so important therapeutically.
Hmm.
We want them to feel calm and regulated and safe, um, and be okay to be vulnerable and all those things.
Right.
How can we do that in our office?
Yeah. Well, then if neuroaesthetics contributes to creativity
Yep.
and promotes creativity, while self exploration requires creativity.
Yes.
Self exploration is therapy.
Mhm.
And this idea of seeing my experience, uh, both the way I currently see it and gaining new perspective on those
Mhm.
experiences too. And so there is creativity used there. And I'm learning now, even today, something as simple as everyone, a plant
Yes.
in your space.
Yeah.
Go look for a picture
Yeah.
that resonates with you,
Yeah.
and it can be anywhere.
Yeah.
But think about how it makes you feel, and then put that in your space.
Right, which is something, I mean, we're all very intelligent human beings, but myself included, I didn't think of the biophilic background behind my decision making around putting my 5 plants in my office.
No,
I just like the outdoors and greenery.
and you love plants.
But now I am a lover of plants, but now I know It's all around the aesthetic experience.
Yeah, and as people want to invest in themselves,
yes,
this is a way you can actively invest in self.
it
You
sure
can
is.
put these elements into all different parts of your life.
Yes.
So much to think about here. We're headed to commercial break, but Feels Out Loud will process your questions and thoughts in just a moment.
You gotta find the people. Express yourself.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you all, our listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or any of our topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly. You can also email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. We want you to follow us on social media as well and hear from you about what you're wondering about.
A giant thank you to our listeners who have sent in questions about neuroaesthetics. I selected one question because I felt like it embodied everybody else's, and it was a perfect segue from what we just finished talking about.
Yeah.
How can I implement any of these ideas in an office space that already exists? Which is such a good question.
Mhm.
Followed up by, and how do I do this and approach this topic without offending my boss?
Yeah.
Because you do have to be sensitive to that topic of, this is a space that already exists, so how much change can you really bring into it? As we talked about before, the curvature of things, certain things you can't adjust, but there are so many things you can do with your existing space. And it can be as simple as going to your boss and saying, hey, there's some simple changes I'd love to make that could make the space more cohesive or more appealing for, if it's clients, patients, whoever, the target audience is that you're working with. What are your thoughts? Just broaching it first, I think, is a good idea. A lot of the times, your office space is your space, so you can do whatever you want with it. But let's look at small things you can do.
Mhm.
So one of the things we talked about was the plants,
Mhm.
bringing in that biophilic piece. So bring in plants. If you're concerned about allergies and things like that, then they don't have to be real. It's just that idea of bringing the outside in.
Yep.
Becky also mentioned it a few seconds ago about bringing in pictures. It can be pictures of the outdoors.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be plants.
Mhm.
And you also don't have to spend a lot of money, because we all know that I love myself some thrifting.
Mhm.
And so you can go to Goodwill, you can go to secondhand shops and find pictures if you're on a budget. You can also just have photographs you've taken of nature.
Yep.
And blow those up and frame them. And so those are easy ways for the biophilic piece. As far as the mood and things like that, that's where color comes in. You may not be able to paint the walls. That may not be the realistic solution. So then how can you bring that in? Well, textures and different things like pillows, throws, a rug, all of that. Although you may not be able to change the walls, you can change a lot with color
Mhm.
and pops of color throughout. And thinking of what we just said as far as things that can impact mood, like bright colors, calming colors.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about if you're in a cubicle,
Yeah.
you don't got a lot of ability to, you don't even maybe have walls.
Right.
But you could put pictures as rotating on your screen
Yes.
and
Yes.
have that be your default screen that
Yep.
a photo that you've taken.
Yep.
Or something that you search online and rings for you. You could get a pillow that you put on your chair that you
Yes.
sit
Yep.
at, or a small little blanket that you put over the back of your chair.
Yes.
Things that for you would feel and bring up these neuroaesthetics, calming, grounded, things like that.
Yep.
That it can be a tiny thing you put on the desk that you have,
Mhm.
and ask the people if you share the space with,
Yep.
or something that you bring with you every single day
Yep.
to put back on the desk.
Yes. And there are so many things nowadays, because aesthetics and aesthetically pleasing environments have become so popular. You can get removable wallpaper. You can
Yep.
get all these things that you could add even to cubicles. So
Thank you for listening this morning, everyone. Join us next week as we talk through more mental health focused topics, but in the week ahead. Be kind to yourself. Remember that connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Do some don't, some